Kenko Hacks, a podcast about wellness, health, and biohacking.
こんにちは。This is Eva at Kenko Hacks, resource for optimizing health through latest sciences and ancient wisdom from around the globe. Today, I am thrilled to have with us Olsson, author of the book Conscious Breathing, one of the best books written on the topic of breathing, I would say. He is also founder and CEO of Conscious Breathing platform beyond the scope of the book. Anders, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you, Eva, and thank you for the nice introduction.
My pleasure. Breathing is essential for life. Yet, while optimizing our health, breathing often doesn't get the primary attention like nutrition or exercise does. Anders, you are one of the global leaders when it comes to evangelizing the importance of breathing. How did you find breathing and specifically conscious breathing as your mission and calling in your life?
Well, I was translating a few health-related books from English to Swedish, and when I tried to find a new book to translate, I came across a book called How to Swap Asthma for Life, and it was almost exclusively about breathing, and it was based on the Buteyko method from the Russian professor Konstantin Buteyko. And when I read that book, I got, wow, this is it. This is the most important thing of them all. And it didn't take long before I decided I should be the world's leading expert on breathing, because I noticed quite immediately how it affected me, my health, my stress levels. I was able to reduce them. And everyone has this tool with us. We can turn to our breath wherever we are and whenever during the day. Anyone can turn into that, what I think is a superpower, actually. And
Yes.
it's especially since it's not used, since very few people realize that we have such a power in our breath to reduce pain, to improve our heart function, to improve sleep, to improve endurance and energy, digestion.
Yes. So you got quite immediately hooked on the idea of breathing. It sounds like it was it caught you really deeply, and since then you have written a book. I said I'm a big fan of the book and your work, and you have been speaking. I have watched many of your YouTube videos. You have been lecturing at different places. You have been on different interviews. You have been featured in many different places, and you have really become one of the, I would really say that one of the global leaders when it comes to educating people how to breathe right, how to breathe consciously. As I said, I'm a big fan of conscious breathing because it focuses on long-term health optimization. Some other modalities like Buteyko, and there is the Wim Hof method. They are quite well-known modalities. They are wonderful for some specific, maybe more short-term purposes, but for health optimization in the long run, and I would even say for longevity, if that's a purpose people want to practice better breathing for, I feel that slow nasal breathing seems to make the most sense. And for audiences who are still unfamiliar with conscious breathing, can you please explain what it is?
It is like a concept, a set of simple habits that makes up good breathing and an understanding of what makes up poor breathing and how to get from poor to better breathing, basically.
I know that in your book you have some principles. So there are 5 principles in the current book, and
That's true.
I believe that in your upcoming book, so you are revising the book, and in the revised version there will be 2 more.
There will be 7 habits in the updated version. I don't know when will be published, though.
I very much look forward to reading the revised version. Would you like to go briefly some of those principles that I already mentioned nasal, slow breathing. What are other principles or habits of conscious breathing?
Yeah, so if we just start with nasal, why it is so important? The nose actually prepares the air for the lungs. So good breathing starts in the nose. And if we compare it with mouth breathing, nose is for breathing, mouth is for eating and talking, singing. In the nose, the air is warmed and humidified, and a lot of the particles we inhale, which is bacteria, viruses, and other particles, they get trapped in the nose. While mouth breathing, there you then draw cold, dry air full of particles down into the lungs, and they then get irritated and inflamed, and they get more narrow, which effectively forces the air higher up in the chest. So that is why nasal breathing is so important, preparing the air for the lung. And then we have number 2 is the low breathing, which means that we activate the diaphragm, which is our major breathing muscle. About 70 to 80% of the total muscular work of moving the air in and out of the lungs should be performed by the diaphragm when at rest. So the nose and the diaphragm, they work in tandem. They are like a couple working together. So the nose activates the diaphragm, you can say, in a way.
And please go ahead.
And please note that I call it low breathing, the diaphragmatic breath. I don't call it deep breathing because many people associate a deep breath with taking a big breath.
Yes.
So in a way, that word is a little hijacked, I would say, because deep doesn't really mean big. It just means that it goes deep down into the lungs. So that's why I avoid that word and I use low, because another of these 7 habits is the to breathe small instead of big breaths. Because when we take big breaths, we will upset the oxygen carbon dioxide balance. We will take in too much oxygen and we will exhale too much carbon dioxide. And we may think, sorry.
I think that is one of the most fascinating things, actually, when I was reading your book, Conscious Breathing, because that's hardly ever spoken. And I think that many people, almost all of us, automatically think, as you say, when you are told to take a deep breath, you are told, and then it becomes a big breath. And people associate good breathing maybe with good intake of oxygen or more intake of oxygen, and that's supposed to be a good thing. But you have been quite an advocate of no, it is not actually the case, and I really find it a very important and fascinating point because nobody else is really hardly talking about it. So you talk about the importance of taking in right amount of oxygen, but not too much. And also you emphasize the importance of the other gas, which is the byproduct of breathing, which is CO2. Would you like to maybe briefly describe the roles of each of those substances in the body?
Yeah. So most people, if I ask them, take a big breath, they take a big breath, and then I ask, have you oxygenate your body better now? Yes, they say, because we have taken in more oxygen. And then from one perspective, we may think that that is true, but that is not true. If we think about a car, does it go better because we give it more fuel? If it has, the car consumes 1 liter per every 10 kilometer. If I decide to give it 3 times as much, will it go better then? No, obviously not. Or we know that water is good to drink. If I drink no water in a week, that's a huge stress for the body. But if I decide to drink 10 liters in a day, that's huge stress from another perspective. So it's all about balance, whether it's gasoline for the car or water for our body or oxygen. And the thing is that at normal breathing, which most of us don't do anyway, we have a tendency to overbreathe, to take in too much oxygen. And that is a hidden form of hyperventilation. A hyperventilation that is visible, like not a lot of people go around breathing like that. Then that is really severe hyperventilation. The hidden is very common, and already there then. So if we have a normal breathing, we still take in way more oxygen than we need. We are talking about that we are only using about 25% of the oxygen we inhale. 75% is exhaled. That's why mouth-to-mouth breathing works. If we someone that is injured or something and we give them mouth-to-mouth, that is because we exhale our oxygen into the other person, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So oxygen is what happens in our body is not that we are able to deal with that excess oxygen in a good way, because oxygen is really both a curse and a blessing. The reason why we die is because we get lack of oxygen, and the reason why we are so dependent on oxygen is to produce energy. So when we stop breathing, we die basically because lack of energy, because we can produce energy with oxygen or without oxygen, basically. And with oxygen is way more efficient. We can produce up to 16 times more energy from the same amount of nutrient compared to without oxygen.
Yes.
So that's why oxygen is so important. But oxygen is both a curse and a blessing. Oxygen is also dangerous because it is highly reactive. If I have a fire and I put oxygen on the fire, it will basically explode. And our mitochondria in our cells, that is the place where we produce most of the energy, and that is where oxygen is used. And they are called the powerhouses of our cell. Up to 90% of our energy should be produced in them, which needs oxygen. They can't function without oxygen, and they are likened with a furnace. And if we get too much oxygen in our body, there will be problems similar to if we take a bite in an apple and put it down and let it lay there for a couple of minutes, it will start to turn brown. And that is because oxygen comes there and react with the apple. Or we expose metal to oxygen, it will start to rust. So the curse with oxygen is that if we take in too much oxygen, we will create inflammations in our body. That is called oxidative stress.
Absolutely.
So we need oxygen, but too much could be a disadvantage.
Absolutely. And I think that's really missed point by many people. So we have to breathe anyhow. So we do that. And the question is how we do that and if we do it right. So when we breathe, it's an absolute necessity for life. But 1 to 2% of oxygen we breathe in produces free radical in our body, and that's also a necessary byproduct of. By reducing, so by conscious breathing, small, slow nasal breathing, by reducing the amount of oxygen, by being conscious about not overly taking in oxygen, you could perhaps reduce the amount of free radicals produced in our body and reducing the potential damage to our body in that way. It makes total sense to me, and that's why I find the conscious breathing, its principles or habits, very promising for if you are interested in long-term health optimization and even longevity.
Yeah, so you can think about it in this way. We take about 1,000 breaths each hour. So how can I improve slowly, one step at a time, these 1,000 breaths so I take more and more of them in line with my body's need?
Yes. What other principles or habits are included in conscious breathing?
Well, if we can just finish off this, the slow breathing, and that also goes hand in hand with, the small breathing we're talking about, it goes hand in hand with slow breathing. It's the slow and small breathing that makes up the balance, that creates a balance between the body's need for oxygen and the body's production of carbon dioxide, so that we get rid of the right amount of carbon dioxide, the excess. When we overbreathe, when we breathe too fast, which a lot of people do, we take in too much oxygen, as we talked about, but we also exhale too much carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide has many important properties. It is as far as you can come from what most people believe, that oxygen is the thing, carbon dioxide, that's just a horrible waste product. Get rid of it as soon as possible. That is not the case. To start with, it controls the breathing. We have the brainstem situated we have the breathing center situated in the brainstem, and the brainstem checks the carbon dioxide levels. So when it is produced in the body all the time, and when the carbon dioxide levels reach a certain level, that is what triggers an inhale. The brainstem sends a signal via the phrenic nerve to the diaphragm to move down and create a lower pressure in the lungs, which draws the air into the lungs. So carbon dioxide controls the most important bodily function, our breath. So it cannot be a waste product only,
Right.
can it?
So it's not the oxygen, that's the carbon dioxide which controls the breath.
Yeah, for healthy people, if you are severely sick, then our body starts to pay more attention to the oxygen levels as well. But in general, it's the carbon dioxide that controls your breathing, which means that if you have low tolerance for carbon dioxide, if you have a low carbon dioxide pressure, think of it like the blood pressure. Everyone knows about the blood pressure, but the carbon dioxide pressure is rarely spoken about. So the carbon dioxide pressure, if we have a low pressure, we have then accustomed the body to tolerate very little increase before a new breath is triggered. So we are breathing fast because we tolerate very little carbon dioxide. While if we slow down our breathing, if we tolerate higher levels of carbon dioxide, then there is a higher span. The body can produce a lot of carbon dioxide before the breathing center is triggered. So that's basically the difference between, if you think about two different states, ultimate relaxation, like being in a meditative state, and extreme stress, like in a panic attack. What is the main difference between those two states? Well, it's not food, it's not sleep, it's not positive thinking, it's not whether you're in love or going through a divorce. The main difference is your breath. The main difference is carbon dioxide. In the panic attack, the carbon dioxide pressure is very low, which compared to in the meditative state, the carbon dioxide pressure is high and the breathing rate is low. And one of the properties of carbon dioxide is that it has a relaxing and widening effect on the smooth muscles. So we have three types of muscles. We have the heart muscle, the skeletal muscles, which we can control by will, and then we have the smooth muscles, and they are all over the place. They are in our airways, they are in our blood vessels, they are in our stomach, intestines, uterus, bladder. And when we overbreathe, when we lower the carbon dioxide pressure, then these muscles start to contract. So in asthma, we call it bronchospasm. These smooth muscles, they go into spasm. So if that happens to in a panic attack, for sure you're breathing fast, right?
Yes.
So that means then that your blood vessels will start to constrict, and the brain needs a lot of blood and a lot of oxygen. So the panic brain is stressed because it has less blood and less oxygen. So when you slow down your breathing, for example, if you have a panic attack and come to the hospital, you will get a bag to breathe in and out through.
Yes.
Yeah. And the reason why bag breathing works is because then you will rebreathe some of the air that you just, some of the carbon dioxide that you just exhale, because we are basically carbon dioxide factories. So
Yes.
we exhale 100 times more carbon dioxide than we inhale. So when you exhale it into the bag and inhale it again, you will effectively calm down the smooth muscles, you will widen the blood vessels, you will send more blood and more oxygen to the stressed panic brain so it can relax. Simple, right?
Yes, but I truly find this point of topic, you also write about it in your book, truly fascinating and underspoken. So because people so much focus on oxygen and its benefit and really forget about carbon dioxide, and that's definitely something we would like to understand more. And I think in a general sense. And there is this is not totally a little bit unrelated topic, but there's so many different gases in our body. I feel so. There is, for example, in Japan, health benefit of hydrogen has been discussed quite widely, because there is a group of researchers in Japan who I think was as early as 2009, maybe 2008, published a paper on Nature. I think. Publication, and became quite well known that the hydrogen's health benefit. It's also a gas, and it's also produced in our body. It has maybe nothing to do with breathing per se. You can breathe in hydrogen gas as well, but it's a byproduct of our guts, for example, guts microbiome, and so we have different gases in our body, and yeah, and they are how they affect our body and how we can potentially optimize their balance to optimize our health. I think that's quite understood. I think.
One way of looking at it, if we're talking about oxygen and carbon dioxide, is that, and you say oxygen has so much attention, carbon dioxide gets hardly any attention.
Yes.
We live in a male-dominated society, and oxygen in that sense is the male energy. It is the yang, while carbon dioxide is the female. It's the yin.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, we get in the hospital, for example, you can get 100% oxygen. It is forced into your body. And while carbon dioxide, if you think about it, it is really carbon dioxide that is actually inviting the oxygen. It is carbon dioxide that lay the foundation for good oxygenation. So instead of forcing it in, this reactive gas, we are inviting not more than necessary, not more than we need. So carbon dioxide in the brainstem controls the breathing, right? Initiates the breath, inviting the oxygen in, and then carbon dioxide widening the airways, inviting the oxygen further down into the lungs, and then carbon dioxide is widening the blood vessels, inviting the oxygen out in the body. And then finally, actually, carbon dioxide helps to kick off the oxygen from the blood. It is called the Bohr effect, and it has to do with pH. So carbon dioxide affects the pH. So in the lungs, we have a higher pH, while at the cellular level, we have a lower pH. And carbon dioxide lowers the pH, and that is what makes the hemoglobin change shape. At the higher pH in the lungs, the hemoglobin has a shape that attracts oxygen, which makes sense because that's where the oxygen is taken up in the lungs. But when the pH goes down at the cellular level, which is assisted with the carbon dioxide, because the carbon dioxide is produced at the cellular level, then it actually kicks off the oxygen from the hemoglobin, from the blood, so that it can enter into the cell and assist in this energy production chain.
Yeah, this is truly endlessly fascinating topic, and just to sidestep again, maybe. So it is truly breathing, even though it is such an essential part of our health or our body function. It is hardly ever looked into when we discuss health optimization, for example. I recently took a DNA test. I have taken a couple, 23andMe and one another DNA company it is called, and got a report that tells some of my DNA gene. I have some mutation which does this and that. There are different sections, categories. So about methylation, about cardiovascular health, and about metabolism, I think, and there are a couple other things. But there is no section about breathing, and I'm quite sure that there are genetic components to how you breathe as well. So how your breathing it's not your destiny. However, some things might be interesting to know. Maybe you have a genetic tendency to, for example, in this test, what I was I found interesting was something actionable. So I learned that I have a genetic tendency not to convert vitamin A precursor in vegetables and fruits into active form of vitamin A. So I have a suboptimal activity in converting that, and that's very good to know actually, because then I can increase my intake of um, animal source of vitamin A. That's very easy and actionable. And I am quite sure there must be some kind of actionable knowledge within our DNA which concerns our breathing capacity. But that's nothing. I don't think no DNA analyzing company is looking into such a thing. So that's it's a long way to go, I think, before people really embraces the idea
Yeah,
of how breathing can be
true.
essential for optimizing our
I must
health.
say, though, from my perspective, when I started in 2009, there is a huge difference in the interest in breathing today compared to then.
Hmm.
But probably from the outside, nothing has really happened. But in my view, a lot has happened. So I think we have started this journey where people get more and more interested in breathing and the health aspects and performance aspects it
Hmm.
can have.
I'm sure that your work, your book, and your work to speak about that publicly has certainly helped to raise that awareness, and maybe something like it's yoga, for example. If people are
Oh yeah,
serious into
yoga,
yoga, you
mindfulness.
mindfulness, then you focus on breathing as well. But would you like to continue on the habits of
Yes.
yes?
So we have mentioned four, right? Nose, low, slow, small. And then number five is our posture, an erect posture. That is important to make room for the diaphragm to work, to make room for this low breath. And the reason why we want the air to travel down into the lungs, there are several. One is that we want the air to circulate. If it doesn't circulate, there will be stagnant air, there will be bacteria and other particles that get trapped in the lungs. And over time, that will lead to inflammations and maybe chronic inflammations and destroyed lung tissue. So we really, really want to have the circulation of the air in the lungs. So that's why we want the air to reach the lower part of the lungs. But not only that, there are also the alveoli, the small air sacs, where the gas exchange takes place. That's where the action is. That's where we want the air we inhale. We want them to reach the alveoli. And think of it like a snorkel. There is no action for a long time until the air reaches the alveoli. It should travel, if you think of an elevator, it should travel 23 stories down before it reaches the alveoli. And the most of these alveoli, they are situated in the bottom of the lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And also there is far more blood. So the blood that enters the lungs, we want it to be oxygenated, and we want it to get rid of the excess carbon dioxide. And there is 10 times as much blood flowing in the lower parts of the lungs compared to the upper parts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we want to have this diaphragmatic breath. And in order to do that, if we have a slump posture, we will just force the air automatically higher up in the chest. The diaphragm can't work, and the air can't circulate in the lower parts of the lungs. And that's, for many people, a challenge in today's society, right?
Yes.
We sit way too much. We spend too much time in front of the TV, computer, smartphone, etc. So that is an important.
Absolutely. Many people, including myself, we are hunching because my daytime job is at a tech company and it's a desk work, and it almost happens automatically. And I've seen people even in their 20s, late 20s, already having this hunching shoulders and this, and it is fixed basically. If you don't stretch and train your back, I have noticed, you can really your posture can become like this. Permanently, and it takes a conscious effort to get it right, put back to backwards. So I could easily imagine posture is such an important component of conscious breathing. When we talk about the muscle, so when we talk about, for example, heart muscle, many people might think that you can train heart muscle, right? So today we are mostly focusing on how breathing can have an impact, positive impact on our health. But can we actually train or do something to improve the breathing health? So, for example, lung muscle or diaphragm, can we improve their function by doing something so that they can breathe better?
Yeah, one aspect of breathing is the lung function, and we shouldn't think of our lungs or the diaphragm as as a muscle or biceps. Or let's go to the gym and work out and give it a really good workout. It's those are really delicate muscles. The breathing muscles, the diaphragm, and the lungs itself. They don't have any muscles. They are delicate tissue. So the major thing to improve lung function is to open up the airways, and the main thing in order to do that is to increase the carbon dioxide pressure in the lungs. So that is what you do when you slow down your breathing, when you're breathing lower, when you circulate the air, when you increase the pressure in the lungs. You open up the airways, and then you open up the alveoli, and you improve the lung function. So I have a lot of testimonials on the website, consciousbreathing.com. One of them, an 87-year-old man from Denmark. Had been smoking since he was 17, so for 70 years. He had a lung function of 21%. He couldn't do almost anything. Just thinking a thought made him exhausted. No, but almost. And he started to use the Relaxator breathing retrainer that helped him to increase the pressure in the lungs, helped him to improve the circulation. And he managed to get his lung function up to almost 50%.
That's
At
very
that
impressive.
age, 87, and he did not stop smoking. Isn't that crazy?
It definitely sounds crazy, yes.
It tells us a bit about how amazing our body is.
Yes, and human mind as well, that he didn't still stop smoking.
Yeah.
That's quite an achievement in so many different levels. I would definitely have to take a look at the testimonial at your website, consciousbreathing.com. Would you like to move to next habits of conscious breathing as
Yes,
well?
the habit of rhythm. And if we look around, we see rhythms everywhere, right? We see the lunar cycle, we see the seasons, we see the menstrual cycle, the day and night, the hormonal rhythms, like more when we should, of some hormones when we should go to sleep, and others more in the morning, etc. And in my view, the most important of them all is the breathing rhythm. And in my view, the breathing rhythm lay the foundation. It affects the heart rhythm, the brain rhythm, the hormonal rhythms, the sleep rhythms. So if we have good breathing rhythms, then the other rhythms are able to surf on that breath, on that rhythm, so to say. So
it's a
for example,
signal to our body. The breathing rhythm is kind of signal to our body. That's what you are saying.
yeah, it's like they are surfing on the breath. So for example, the heart, you can notice that the heart will be affected by your breathing. If you start to breathe very fast, your heart will start to breathe faster. If you look at your brain and your brain waves, if you hyperventilate for a couple of minutes, you will notice a huge difference in the brain waves.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to our heart, we can notice that on the inhale, the pulse goes up, and on the exhale, the pulse goes down. So if I'm exaggerating, this is a forceful inhalation. We may get scared or something, and that will definitely increase our pulse, or the opposite. We sigh in relief, we feel safe. The exhale is tied to relaxation. And we can, most people can feel it themselves. When they inhale, if they check their own pulse, they notice a certain pulse, and then when they exhale, they notice that it goes down.
Yes.
So the key in general for, I believe, a definition of health is that we spend too much time in fight, flight, freeze. We react too much to the incoming stimulated things that comes our way with a fight, flight, freeze response. So the challenge is then for us to train our body, train our system, train our mind, and our breath, of course, to react more to the incoming stimuli with a parasympathetic, safe and relaxed response. And that is to be found in the exhale. So that is why I think this is so effective, the Relaxator. It helps you to slightly prolong your exhale. And in general, then it helps you to create a better rhythm, because it seems like the two hallmarks of poor breathing is either that we're breathing a little too fast and shallow, and the other is that we are holding our breath, which is not rhythmic at all, right?
Right.
So at night we call it sleep apnea, apneic events when we stop breathing, and it's very, very stressful for the body. At daytime, I call it computer apnea, stress apnea, text message apnea, or just whatever you want apnea, basically.
Yes.
Because whatever we do, we have a tendency to stop breathing.
Absolutely. So, as well as being an author, you also are an entrepreneur, and I can definitely sense an entrepreneurial spirit when speaking to you. And I have my Relaxator here. So, this is one of the products people can buy from your platform, so your website, consciousbreathing.com.
Yeah.
And so you just mentioned that this is supposed to make, and I think it's supposed to make you relax. That's why it's called Relaxator. And after
Yes.
I have been using it for about 2 weeks now, and what I personally notice is that so I monitor my heart rate and heart rate variability real time with a device called Leaf. So I can see how Relaxator affects those two variables quite immediately. And what I have noticed constantly is that when I'm having, so it has 5 different levels. You can put on different level of resistance, I think. And my level currently is 2, so it's not very strong resistance, but it without a failure slows down my heart rate. That's quite remarkable. It happens quite immediately after I have taken a few breaths, basically, with this in my mouth, and I can quite remarkably constantly see that, oh, my pulse has gone down, and that happens every time I have this on my mouth and breathe. So maybe you can briefly introduce why did you come to invent this wonderful device, Relaxator?
Yeah. Does your heart rate variability is it affected at
So
all?
the heart rate variability, it's one of my 5 favorite topics. But the heart rate variability I have found is a little bit more inconsistent, and I know that because heart rate variability, at least for me, is more inconsistent. That it's the most difficult value for me to consciously affect because so many things affect, like if I have eaten, for example, or if it's morning time or evening time. So it's quite difficult to say. I haven't come out. I know that you have an article on your website where you mention Relaxator's positive impact on heart rate variability, and I generally see that. But what I see constantly, really without failure, is lower heart rate. But heart rate variability, as I said, is, at least for me, there are so many other things which can, like
I understand.
so it's circadian rhythm, and so I haven't come to that strict conclusion. But yes, because heart rate variability usually is the difference between your highest heart rate and the rhythm between the heart rates. Yes, if it goes down, usually it brings heart rate variability up as well. But that I have found is a little bit more complex topic because heart rate variability is such a complex thing, I think.
True. And to be fair, you have just used this for a couple of weeks, so maybe
2
over
weeks
time
now.
it will
I think it's a
help.
trend which you want to monitor because, like for example, in my case, even uh, my cycles or my monthly cycle actually quite quite persistently affects my heart rate variability. So I actually have to use it a couple months to see the trend,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. And the cycles is interesting from a breeding perspective. Progesterone, which is higher at the end, um, before the menstruation, it starts to get higher just before the menstruation and during the menstruation. The progesterone affects breeding. So when men, or I've seen studies where they've given cats progesterone, they increase the breeding.
I can attest to that because I wear Aura Ring as well, and it shows nighttime breathing rate basically, and it is higher during my luteal phase, and it happens every time. So
Yeah.
there is definitely a trend, and for women, for maybe for that reason as well, if you'd like to measure things like breathing rate and heart rate variability, you would like to experiment over a couple of months to get, because
Yeah,
it's a trend,
exactly.
and for women
Yes.
it's not like a linear, it's more like cycle, I think.
Yeah. So just to mention, I got a beautiful testimonial the other day, because what happens then when progesterone increases, right? Breathing increases, you will lower the carbon dioxide pressure.
Mm.
And in my view, that could be a major contributing factor to PMS problems, where you have cramps, for example, because the smooth muscles get constricted. So the beautiful testimonial I got the other day was from a woman. She was trying for the first time one of the products we are developing. It's called Body Stream. So basically, it's like you put on a swimsuit and you fill it up with carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide is absorbed through the skin. And she said, here I was in the morning, laying in bed, crying of pain from the cramp I had. And then later that day, I went into this carbon dioxide suit, and within 5 to 10 minutes, the pain was gone. And the only way I knew that I had a period was because of the bleeding. And the bleeding also reduced significantly.
Mm.
And I normally have 7 to 8 days of period. Now it was down to 5.
Mhm.
Um, that is quite amazing, actually.
It is very amazing testimony. I think I have seen that briefly. You have briefly shown that the suit in some other interviews on YouTube. I have
Yeah,
seen.
yeah.
I'm
So
very curious to.
we're still developing that one, but
Mhm.
but I'm more curious to see, does it actually give the effect? The theories, the studies I have read all about the positive effects of carbon dioxide and the negative effects of overbreathing. And the more we test, the more we study, the more we think that that is the case. So
I think I find it absolutely fascinating, and it makes sense. So progesterone, what it does, at least on a subjective level, then is it makes you hotter. So it's choose a as a woman, if you are on a luteal phase, progesterone level is higher, your temperature also goes higher. It's a quite slight. It's 0.4 to
Yeah.
0.5, but it's still higher. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And think about it, the mitochondria, that is where we produce the energy, but there we also produce heat. And for example, I've tried many times, especially before in my previous life, if I can call it that, when I was more stressed out and I had these sugar cravings. So I could easily eat a chocolate bar very fast, to the point where it started to heat up in my cheeks. And what I've realized now is, because we have this in the saliva, we have the protein amylase, which can break down sugar.
Yes.
That's the reason why we have such a big brain. We have 20 times more amylase, for example, than a chimpanzee. So that's why we can feed the brain more easily with sugar. So anyway, my understanding is that when I eat all of this sugar, it goes into the blood very fast, and when it reaches this area, and I don't have the need for that energy. So you're basically flooding the mitochondria with sugar, and the mitochondria go, oh my God, what shall I do? Well, we have to uncouple because we don't need all this energy. So we switch to producing less energy and more heat. That's why that's a survival mechanism for the mitochondria. But that was when I flooded the mitochondria with sugar, right?
Yes.
But we can also flood the mitochondria with oxygen, and they may then adopt the same strategy. So a lot of people testify to the fact that when they start to do nasal breathing while exercising, they sweat less, which makes sense in this looking at from this perspective.
Yes.
I notice that when I'm eating sugar, I have more night sweats, for example. I think there is a close correlation between that. The circulating sugar or the circulating oxygen, and whether the body goes into producing more heat. So that could explain the increase in temperature when the progesterone increases at the
That's
luteal phase.
fascinating observation. So when people start breathing, right, so conscious breathing, and sweat less, for example, you might initially think that, well, I am less nervous maybe, and it might be true, but on top of that, maybe there is this heat and even this mitochondria oxygen that overloads that element as well, which is fascinating. I wish that somebody will research such topic and get data.
I wish that too. My dream is to create an own research lab to be able to do all these studies from
Well,
the breathing perspective.
yeah, I mean, you are located in southern part of Sweden, I think, as myself, and there's universities here with brilliant minds. So I hope that you can really realize such a dream. I'm hoping for that. Beside this Relaxator, which I will keep using, and I will report to you and understand in 1-2 months how it progresses.
Please.
Because I think especially for a woman, just a couple of weeks is not enough. You also have Sleeptape. So I think when you purchase this, you get Sleeptape as well in the same package. And I have also been using that for the last couple of weeks, and I love it. I have to say, strangely enough, I love it. And so one very clear benefit with Sleeptape is that, so I put it on my, I can maybe show. So it is a very simple, and it's very convenient. So it looks like this, and you tear it off and put it on your lips, and it's not too strong. What is that?
The adhesive.
Adhesive, exactly. So it's very comfortable to put. And my fiance loved it as well because I usually speak quite a lot. I'm quite chatty just before falling asleep. And now I have my tape on, so I'm very quiet. So he thinks it's very nice. So that's one clear benefit. But besides that, I think that it really calms me down. Again, I feel immediately calm and not really forced to. So I started the nasal breathing. I switched to nasal breathing maybe 6 years ago, I would say, as because in Japan, nasal breathing and its benefit is if you'd read some of the well known there in Japan breathing self help books and things like that, nasal breathing is usually mentioned. It's one of their principles, and so I picked it up then. So nasal breathing was quite familiar to me, and this tape then helps me to make sure that it's happening when I'm unconscious in during night. But would you like to mention from your perspective why you created the sleep tape and what it is good for?
Yeah, I mean, I've taped my mouth, I'd say almost every night since 2009. So I like it a lot. And what happened when I held these courses and I told people, yeah, and then I suggest you should try taping your mouth at night. You just go to the pharmacy, you purchase a tape and try it out. And that was a perfect excuse for not trying it out. So I figured that I need to have a product to give them so that they will actually do it. So that's how it started.
Yeah, and it feels such a simple solution. So maybe people might think that, oh, mouth taping, it looks funny and it's so simple. Is it really effective? But so I monitor my sleep. I actually have the Aura ring and I have another ring which is called Sleep On, and that measures a little bit different things than Aura, and that's why I have it. And it's like oxygen saturation, for example, during your sleep time, and putting sleep tip again. I have to be I have to keep doing it for another weeks because of my cycles and everything
Yeah.
affects my sleep measure. But it is definitely I'm seeing better trend, but again what you just said about progesterone's impact, for example, on my breathing frequency, that makes perfect sense. So I would definitely like to keep going to see the positive upward trend, even though it's cycling, like this for me. But subjectively, what I notice is it's very calming, and I feel my heart rate calming when I put it on me, and that's a really wonderful feeling.
Yeah, because mouth breathing, open mouth at rest, means automatically that we are hyperventilating. When we sleep, our metabolism goes down, and if we are then breathing through the mouth, well, there is this irritants in the airways that makes them more narrow, which will then force the air higher up in the chest. That is ineffective, so we have to compensate by breathing faster. So we go into a vicious cycle. So we basically hyperventilate, this low grade form of hyperventilation. But instead of then during sleep entering into parasympathetic, rest, digest, safe, calm, hyperventilation takes us slightly more into the sympathetic direction, which means that our body can't heal and recover and repair the way it is supposed to. So we may wake up more tired. One of the main effects, which I was surprised to when people started to tell me in the beginning, was that they woke up, felt less pain. And I figured, how could this be? How could just putting a tape over your lips reduce your pain? But if you think about it, if I enter into a fight flight, if a danger comes at me, I won't just stand like that, right? I will engage my muscles sort of and be ready to meet the danger. So if I'm laying down and I'm supposed to relax all my muscles, but I'm going into slightly more into fight flight, well, they will start to tense up, right? And no wonder if I sleep for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours, with tense muscles. No wonder they hurt when I wake up. So that is really an interesting effect. And a lot of people notice that they don't need to go to the toilet either. And that goes hand in hand with the carbon dioxide effect on the smooth muscles. So if we have a lower carbon dioxide pressure and we have the bladder here, the smooth muscle starts to constrict, the bladder will be smaller and it will fill up faster, and we need to go to the toilet.
It makes perfect sense when we really think about that. On your website, though, consciousbreathing.com, you also have lots of very detailed articles about breathing, different focuses, and one of them, which I had a pleasure to read, describes Relaxator's positive impact on the HRV. Can you maybe share the benefits of Relaxator specifically from HRV perspective?
Yeah, so the Relaxator helps you. You set the resistance, you put it in your mouth, inhale through the nose, exhale through the Relaxator. So you prolong the exhalation slightly, and that laid a foundation for a slow and low, because the diaphragm is activated when you prolong the exhalation. The inhalation would automatically be lower, and it also creates a rhythmic breath. And all these things, low, slow, rhythmic, slightly longer exhale and inhale, makes up for a good working heart. So that way it could increase your heart rate variability. So in this article that you referred to, for example, my kids, when they studied, I had them study with the Relaxator and without the Relaxator, and it was quite a big difference. I did it myself when I played a computer game. It's called Solitaire, I think, and it's a little bit difficult. And I tried a number of times. I played like 100 times, and I said to myself, I should pay attention to my breathing. I should try to breathe consciously, breathe in a good way. But the problem is I'm a little bit, when it comes to competing, okay, now it's time to compete. And this task, you are doing the solitaire on time. So whenever I hit the start button, I went into competitive mode and my breathing just disappeared like that. So it followed the same pattern every time. After a few seconds, I was totally absorbed by solving the problem. And then when I saw, okay, I'm about to solve it, and I was a few seconds before I had solved it, I went back to my breathing and noticed that it was not very good. So after doing it about 100 times, I decided to try with HRV, and the HRV score wasn't very good. And then I did another bunch of time where I measured the HRV with the Relaxator, and it was a beautiful score.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that because, well, I'm not maybe as competitive as you describe it as you are, but for example, when I have an important meeting or what I think is an important meeting or writing email, I I know that so far I have been trying to. So breathing is something I really have to do consciously, and that's why I think you have given a brilliant name to your methodology of conscious breathing. It's not something. Yes, it's a mandatory thing, autonomic thing. You can do that autonomically as well, but to do that right, you really need conscious focus suddenly. And many times when I have some mentally demanding task at work, for example, I have to choose between if I want to keep breathing right or if I want to forget about that for now, because I have to really, my brain power have to go to this. And
would you consider trying this next
so
time?
I'm thinking, so if I'm having a client meeting or something, obviously it's not a very good
No.
idea. But for example, when I'm writing an email, so a lot of my daytime work is about writing something in front of my computer, and it's nothing, especially because now we work at home now in Sweden. So it's no problem for me having this in my mouth while doing such writing task. So I will definitely give it a try, because as you say, when you are having this in your mouth, it's so much easier to get that reminder that you.
It is. Yeah, it is a reminder in a way. It's one thing to think that you should breathe, like my example here with the computer game. It's another thing, but to actually be able to do it. So what I find is that my theory is this: after using this now, it came out 2011, and I've been using it a lot, especially at work when I need to be creative and focused and stay calm. And usually the stress could take over, and then you just find a number of excuses. You need to go to the toilet, or you need to do tons of things that you could never imagine that had such a high priority, but it's just because it's an avoidance strategy, right?
Yes.
So my view on it is that when our brain gets stressed, it could be because we are focusing, we are concentrating, and we are holding our breath, and we are not realizing that we are holding our breath. But what we are doing then, we are depriving our brain of oxygen, and the brain is the main consumer. The brain is the number one organ that suffers when we have poor breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need a break. We think we need a coffee. We think we need a donut, or we think we need an energy drink, or we think that this task is impossible to solve. But actually, it is just our brain that is suffering from a lack of oxygen. So it can't stay focused. It can't stay creative. So that's what I've noticed more than anything. Sometimes it's like putting it in the mouth and becoming like a machine, and just for several hours and really creating what I want.
Yeah, it is, and it's such an easy and again simple. It's like this sleep tape. It's seemingly simple and such an elegant intervention,
Yeah,
but it works. It's very effective, and it's very it's not it's quite reasonable, affordable as well. So it's really for everyone. I
yeah,
I cannot recommend highly enough. And I will, of course, put your website on the show note of this podcast as well. In the same article, you mentioned that your resting pulse is 35 or 38. And that's very low, either way, 35 or 38. Do you think that Relaxator has a positive impact on our resting heart rate as well? That's certainly what I am experiencing.
yeah. I think so. I don't know. I don't have any data 20 years ago when I was much more stressed out, how my resting pulse, but I'm quite certain that it was much higher than it is today. And I mean, really, there is this close relationship between the heart and the lungs, and they what they talk about, the respiratory sinus arrhythmia, RSA. There is this pacemaker of the heart, and what they say is that if this pacemaker is unaffected by hormones and nervous system, the heart will beat about 100 beats per minute. So in other words, we could almost say that we are kind of born in fight flight. That has ensured our survival during evolution. But as years go by and we become smarter and smarter, and we don't have to look out for danger all the time because we have found ways to remove them from our lives. So then the hormones and the nervous system can have an effect on the heart, and we can slower our heart rate. So that's my idea, that over time, as we move out from fight flight and into parasympathetic, we will be able to lower our heart rate. And our breath is a fantastic way of moving us in that direction.
Absolutely. Breathing is one of the best intervention to
Yeah.
cause that effect. Absolutely, I agree. You have been, Anders, you have been very generous with your time with us today. One of the last questions I would like to ask is if there are any future plans for either for yourself or for conscious breathing, or maybe both, that you are excited about, that you would like to share with us.
Yes. First, can I just say habit number 7
Yes.
is quiet breathing, meaning that if we're talking a lot, if we're talking fast, maybe we can talk a little slower and a little less. I'm not saying we shouldn't talk, of course, but a lot of us, we have a tendency to verbalize and intellectualize a little bit too much, indicating that we are maybe living a little bit too much in our head, and we may benefit from moving more into our body, and our breath can help us with that. And also, if you start to pay attention to it, a lot of people make a lot of sounds. It's not only when we snoring at night, at daytime we also make different sounds, and that means that we are breathing, and those breaths are not particularly good. So that is habit number 7. I just want to finish off with that.
Yes,
But
thank you.
the future plans, apart from the body stream suit I've already mentioned, which is quite exciting,
Yes.
we are developing a product called Breath Key, which measures, it analyzes your breath. Just like, the police, they check in the breath if you have drinking alcohol. This device will analyze your breath for carbon dioxide and oxygen and temperature and humidity, as well as your breathing frequency, your breathing volume, and your breathing rhythm. And thereby you can get an understanding of your metabolism, whether you're burning fat or sugar, if your metabolism is high or low. And we think it has the possibility to reveal quite a lot of information.
I think it's such a fascinating product. I would definitely be one of the first people to try as soon as it becomes available.
Yeah, so it is. I mean, it's more invasive than the rings you talked about, the Aura ring, and the because we capture all the oxygen molecules and all the carbon dioxide molecules, and you do that. You need to have a mask over your mouth.
I totally agree. So different devices. So I do love, and many of our audiences love, the idea of self-quantifications. But there are, of course, limitations. So the sensors, this is optical sensors, and there is definitely a limitation to that. And I think the next generation wearables to quantify health definitely will look beyond the optical sensors, probably as a mean of so one of the reasons why I love the Leaf device is it's not optical sensor, so it's AKG sensors, and that gives you
the
certain
accuracy is really important.
So very excited to hear about your new product. And
the big vision with the Breath Key is, if a dog can smell diabetes and cancer, which they can for sure, well, then there is absolutely no reason why our electronic nose also shouldn't be able to do that.
Absolutely.
If that happens in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. That's the big vision. That's what I hope, that we all have like we have fingerprint, we have like a breath print that we can probably see, just like they've seen in studies that you have a breath signature if you're worried, if you're angry. We think that we will be able to see signatures for asthma, for COPD, etc.
That's the first time I have heard about the breath print.
Yeah.
And that's the first time for many people. You heard it here first time. Anything else? I know that you are revising your book, and that's also exciting news.
Yeah.
And finally, if people would like to learn more about you and your work, conscious breathing, we already mentioned your website, but is it the best place for people to turn to?
It depends a little bit. There are some videos on YouTube, conscious breathing, and a Facebook group where you can ask questions, conscious breathing as well, and there is on Instagram as well. I guess it depends a little bit on who you are.
Okay.
But as you said, Eva, there are a lot of information articles on the website.
Yeah, it is quite extensive archive of I don't know how many articles, but I know that it's a lot of pages you can go through, and that lots of
it's more than the book. So.
Yes, they are. I think the depth of information also is very deep. So it's really like reading a book almost if you go through many of the articles.
Yeah, sorry for that.
I say it as a very positive thing.
And I think there are like 100 testimonials, quite of them very inspiring, where you can identify yourself if you have asthma and see that someone else have had the same problems and that they were able to to reduce them or even get rid of them by doing something as simple as just improving the way you move the air in and out of your lungs.
Absolutely. I would be very happy to add my own testimonial as well,
Yeah.
and because I truly have enjoyed our conversation today, of course, but your book initially, and then as a products I have I was able to find at your store, at your website, and
Yeah.
as I said, I really highly recommend people the book and Relaxator and Sleeptape. Just try it. You will be amazed how effective they can be to improve your different aspects of health.
Yeah.
So, any final words you'd like to say, Anders?
Breathe well, be well.
I agree. Thank you so much again, Anders. This has been a
Thank
true
you.
pleasure today to speaking to you.
Me too. Thank you very much for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Hi, this is Roland at Kenkoax. I hope you enjoyed this interview, and if you would like to listen more, please subscribe to our channel.